How is he going to deal with Vladimir Putin?
Wheel out the Tory line there.
Well,
get a job with the
true,
ministers,
isn't it?
Sam.
It's true. Well,
they're struggling to find ministers to go on the radio to defend him. You do a better job. Well, here we are, Sam, the start of our new podcast, Division Bell.
It's exciting.
And we've got a little bell on the table, although I'm not sure we're actually allowed to ring it.
We're under strict orders. Don't
Touch the bell. I'm John Stevens, political editor of The Mirror.
And I'm Sam Lister, political editor at the Daily Express.
And it is Manifesto week. And Sam, where have the Tories decided to launch their manifesto?
Silverstone, the racetrack, which is quite a brave move, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, in journalism, we quite like a pun, we quite like a metaphor. Obviously, a racing track, there's quite a few metaphors you could use.
Yeah, I think the Prime Minister will be hoping it's a kind of pole position type affair, but there is, I think, a famous example in history of John Major going to visit a racing car, I think it's a racing car factory, actually, and the headlines were all about how the wheels fell off his campaign. So it is a dangerous move, but I'm sure the Prime Minister will pull this off.
Yeah, although, I mean, I think it's more likely we see car crash, wheels coming off rather than pole position. And, I mean, speaking to some people at the weekend, they were suggesting, is there someone secretly inside Tory HQ who is working against the campaign, who wants to things to go wrong? Obviously, in the first week, we had Rishi Sunak in the Titanic quarter in Belfast. He was asked by a reporter whether he was captaining a sinking ship. Now we've got the manifesto at a racecourse. Do you think there's a Tory mole in there or a Labour mole somewhere there in Tory HQ?
It does feel like there have been some quite basic errors. I can't pretend otherwise. And me and you, John, are veterans of these election campaigns. We've seen it all before. And I know the hazards, you know the hazards, and you'd think that CCHQ, which is the Conservative Central Office, the people who organise this, you'd think they would know the pitfalls too. Certainly I was on the 2015 battle bus, we're going back a bit now, and I was on the Ed Miliband battle bus, and I cannot tell you the levels of paranoia that were involved in every single visit on that bus. The team absolutely would not let him get off the bus where the exit sign was in case somebody snapped a picture of him. This is a classic thing. They don't want leaders snapped by exit signs. And so there was this intense level of paranoia all the way through the campaign to make sure there were no bad photos. Now, obviously, we know the Bacon photo happened. There was nothing anybody could really do to predict that. But on the last day, on the very, very last day, the actual election day itself, I was with Ed Miliband in Doncaster. I went to watch him vote. And after he'd voted, and, by then it's all too late, there's nothing that can really be done, one of his senior aides showed me, or drew out for me, a little map, little map involving stick men and a little wall. And it was the route that they had to plan from his house to the polling station. And on one side, they had to avoid, would it have been UKIP at 2015? I think it was a UKIP poster in one window. And on the other side, there was a farm. And a horse was known for hanging his head over the wall. Now, many, many years ago, before even I was born, there was a show called Mr. Ed, which was about a talking horse. And they were very, very paranoid that there'd be a picture of Ed Miliband next to this horse's head hanging over a wall. And that would be all the pictures that would be on social media for the rest of the day. And so they had to devise a route to avoid these two obstacles. That is the level of detail and paranoia that goes into planning every single visit. So, it is quite odd that the Tories haven't been quite as on the ball when it comes to those kind of preparations.
And it's Manifesto week. I guess we should set out some pledges for our listeners. We're obviously both sides of the political debate. You're at the Express, I'm at the Mirror. So I think we will debate the issues. We kind of also want to let people in on the secrets of what's really going on in the campaign. And hopefully we'll have some fun too. And we also want to hear from you, the listeners. Get in touch with us. You can do that on X or Twitter, as it used to be known, at Daily Express and at Daily Mirror. Use the hashtag #TheDivisionBell. And on TikTok, you can find us at Mirror Politics and hopefully we'll do a better job at sticking to our promises than the political parties.
Let's hope so. But we really do want to hear from you out there. We want to know, are there any burning questions you want to know about how the campaigns are run, what the thinking is? If there's any insight we can give you that you don't feel you're getting from your coverage, then we're here to provide those answers, hopefully anyway.
So Rishi Sunak, he's not had the best of campaigns at some points. Some things have gone quite well. I think the debate last week actually went all right for him. But at the end of last week, we saw the D-Day blunder, that massive mistake of leaving the 80th anniversary commemorations early. Do you think that the public will be able to move on for that, or do you think that will still be in voters' minds by the time we get to polling day?
I think it's difficult. I think this is one that will hang over him, and I think he is very acutely aware of that. But I think from the Prime Minister's point of view, I think, to be fair to him, he did not leave any event involving veterans. He was very clear that veterans are really important to him. He wanted to speak to people. He took his wife. They spent a lot of time talking to veterans. The bit that he missed was the International Leaders Ceremony, which was the photo call at the end of the commemorations. Now, obviously, he's our Prime Minister, and so people clearly expected him to be there. And I think he understands now how upset people are. But there was never any point when he left veterans. We just have to be clear about that. But the problem is, once you're explaining, you're losing. And so I think that fact has got lost in the fog of all this. But he has made a heartfelt apology. He's made a number of apologies. He apologised directly to Express readers because it is important to the readers of our paper. And I think he's asking people to look at the future now. What kind of country do you want? Don't judge him on one mistake. Look at his record and look at what he wants to do for the future. And that's what he's asking voters to do now.
I think the thing I find hard to get my head around is why, obviously, his diary is always full. Prime Minister, that is part of the job. But I don't get, in the campaign, you get the chance to be able to stand there on the world stage with Joe Biden, with Macron, with Olaf Scholz from Germany. That's something that, Keir Starmer did manage to get a photo with Zelensky, but you can't do that in the same way. I don't really understand why they didn't think that was something they could use to their advantage. And it sounds like it is feeding through to voters. Lots of things we talk about in politics, it kind of just passes people by.
Yeah.
But I was talking to a shadow cabinet member at the weekend, and they were saying half the doors they knocked on the weekend, people would just bring it up without being prompted. The person I was speaking to said they'd knocked on this door of this 83-year-old guy. He came to the door, and on his canvassing sheet, because parties know what have people said to them before when they've had the door knocked, it says like Tory voter, Tory voter, Tory voter every time they've knocked him. Came to the door and said, "Oh, you're wasting your time knocking my door." So the person said, "Oh, are you voting Tory?" And he was like, "No, I can't vote Tory. I'm going to vote for you for the first time." That I think it does have a real impact with voters. And it is those key voters that the Tories were hoping to keep hold of. They were hoping that they would be able to stop voters going to reform with Nigel Farage, that those key voters also in the swing between Labour and the Tories, these are the sort of things they don't like at all. I think the one thing, though, going in his favour is at least we're still a few weeks out from polling day. I think we all talk about Gillian Duffy and when Gordon Brown described her as a bigoted woman, got caught on the television microphone saying that. I think that was just a few days before polling day. I think the Tories will hope that doing things like launching the manifesto, it will move on the debate. I think it still will be there lingering in voters' minds, though.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think each election campaign is always dominated by one incident. There's always something. Obviously, Theresa May, it was the nothing has changed moment. You talk about Gillian Duffy and Gordon Brown. These things it is hard to move on. Campaigns are very intense. They're very febrile. They're emotionally kind of draining for the people involved. The people are very tired, and mistakes do happen because people are under incredible amounts of pressure, and we see it every time there is some slip. And you can see the parties. Well, we actually saw with Gordon Brown when he was interviewed after that moment. Even though it was a radio interview, it was on camera, and we saw that image of him with his head in his hands, and there is always that head in hands moment on every campaign that does dominate, and it is hard to move on from those things. Clearly, that is the case for Rishi Sunak with this incident. 5 to 6 days on, we're still talking about it. That says everything. I think it's interesting, though, you mentioned about Nigel Farage and reform, and clearly Nigel Farage has wanted to capitalise on this. He's talked about the Prime Minister not being patriotic. I would argue he is actually a very patriotic person. I think that is deeply unfair, to be honest. But also there is a row, we have it in today's paper, about one of Reform's candidates who talked about how Britain should have been neutral
about Hitler.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me that the party are standing by him. Ben Habib, the deputy leader, has been out on the airwaves this morning. Well, I say defending his candidate. I mean, he clearly was very uncomfortable having to defend this candidate. And he talked about how Reform has had to scrabble around very quickly to fill as many seats as it has with candidates. But the fact that they haven't jettisons this candidate leaves them open to accusations. Well, actually, hang on a minute. Who were these veterans fighting for? Who were they fighting against? I don't think any of them thought Britain should be neutral in the fight against fascism. And so I think that, if Nigel Farage is launching an attack on the Prime Minister for being unpatriotic, I think really he also has to look into his own party and the kinds of things people are saying there.
And you talked to a lot of Tory MPs. What is the mood amongst Tory MPs about how they think things are going for Rishi Sunak? Do they think it's going as badly as it seems to be going from most people's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly not a kind of joyous mood in the party, that is for sure. But I think there is a sense of, actually, look, we have to fight here. We do not want a Labour landslide. We feel that's bad for the country. And so, OK, this campaign is not the most straightforward and smooth that's ever run, but, we have something to fight for. And that is the sense I get from the Conservative MPs that I speak to. And it's interesting, actually. One contacted me at the weekend, Miriam Cates. She's the Conservative candidate for Penistone and Stocksbridge. She's on the right of the party. She's part of the New Conservatives, the group of kind of quite hard right, I would say. They are very socially conservative. They are tough on immigration. She contacted me to say, can I write a piece for the Daily Express? I want to make it clear that although we have many values in common with Reform, I am a Conservative and I will not be defecting. And I think it's interesting that even though the campaign hasn't been as straightforward as Conservative MPs would want, so many of them say to me, look, I am a Conservative through and through. I know Reform are on the rise, but I will not desert the party. I will fight with every breath because I believe that socialism is a destructive force for this country. So they are motivated by that, and they are still fighting, and they will fight to the very end.
And the thing that I think it's felt like it's been punctuating the campaign has been these big set-piece events on TV. So we obviously had the first TV debate last week with Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer on ITV. Then on Friday, we had that 7-way debate with Penny Mordaunt and the massive hair.
The blow-dry. I can reveal, by the way, John, I have used Kelly, the blow-dry Supremo, who gave Penny that massive hair, and I have asked her specifically before, can you do me a really enormous blow-dry? And I walked into the office and my colleagues kind of stood back in shock at how huge my hair had gone. So she's a tremendous hairdresser, Kelly. I'll give her her dues.
And we've obviously still got more debates to come. I think Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer both on Sky News in Grimsby on Wednesday evening this week. Rishi Sunak last night was on with Nick Robinson on the BBC, and we still haven't seen the tape of the ITV interview, which was the cause of all the D-Day stuff. So when Rishi Sunak came back from Normandy, it was because he was going to do an interview with ITV. ITV says they didn't pick the date.
Yeah.
That was the choice of the Tory party. But we've heard rumblings that when they did that interview afterwards, the thing that Number 10 were worried about, the thing that they thought was going to go wrong was it sounds like Paul Brown, the host, had brought up some tricky questions about Rishi Sunak and his wealth and whether he understood the problems of voters. I think when we do see that tape, when it's finally out there, I think, number one, there will be scrutiny on the Prime Minister. People will be watching to see how he answers his questions. I think that people understand that Rishi Sunak's rich, but I think they do also want to know that he understands what it's like for normal people. And I do think it also risks reigniting the D-Day row again, because it is just another reminder that he left those D-Day events early.
Yeah, this is a real danger point for the Prime Minister. And I think, we have heard these rumblings that there will be a discussion about his privileged upbringing. And I think this kind of goes to the heart of the issues with the Prime Minister and the campaign, doesn't it? In that Labour just want to attack him for being rich. And it's very hard. He just is rich. There is nothing he can do about that. But I would say it's not as though Keir Starmer's exactly poor. Keir Starmer is not out there scrabbling around having to add up his weekly shop. He's not going round Asda with a calculator. Can I get round with this food shop? There is a certain point in life where once you tip past a certain point of earning, it is all slightly relative, isn't it? I don't think Keir Starmer's reality day to day is much different from Rishi Sunak's in that, when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, I think he had a chauffeur for part of that, even though he was just travelling a few miles across London. He was on a good salary. He's got a nice home. He's certainly not scrabbling around the back of the sofa looking for a few coppers.
No, I think that's clearly right. Obviously, Keir Starmer, as most people know, ran the Crown Prosecution Service. He was obviously a lawyer before that. He's clearly someone who has earned quite a bit of money. He's clearly got quite a nice life. I think, though, what people want to see is, do people understand what they've been through? And yeah, Keir Starmer is quite well off now, but clearly that's not how he started. He's talked quite a bit about his background, how his family didn't always have loads of money. And I think that for a lot of people who are paying attention now for the first time, we've obviously heard many times that his dad was a tool maker, his mum was a nurse, but many people won't have heard that before. And I think that's why he's quite keen to talk about it. And also he realises people are going to be voting for who they want to be Prime Minister. And so, therefore, I think they've got a bit of a right to know who exactly is this person who could be a number 10.
Is it a case in that, there is a point where you are too rich to be a Prime Minister?
It's tricky though, isn't it? With David Cameron, there were many times where he tried to hide his wealth, and I think that felt inauthentic. And then Rishi Sunak doesn't seem to have any problem with flaunting his wealth. We've done several stories about how the luggage he's carrying around on the campaign trail is worth £800, £900.
I think that's so ridiculous. He's rich. What do you want him to do? Go into, TK Maxx and buy a cheap bag? It's ridiculous.
But I think
of course he's going to buy a nice bag.
Even I would admit, I think there is something more authentic about carrying your actual luggage rather than getting a cheapo bag. But I do think it does show something about... Fine. When he went down to Cornwall, he went down to my hometown, Penzance, on the sleeper train and then got off with this bag. I think when you're going to an area like that where, yeah, it's a nice area, but people there are on low salaries, if you turn up there with a massively expensive bag, I think it does show a bit of lack of understanding.
See, I feel like it's really insulting to just kind of falsely dress down because you're going to meet real people. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? Isn't that demeaning to suggest that ordinary voters are going to be fooled by this, cheaper clothing than you can actually afford? Everyone knows he's wealthy. Does anybody really think he's going to buy his clobber at some discount store? It's just
clearly not. We had the Prada shoes on the building site. We've got the expensive bag. Clearly, he's got no problem in
I think Sir Keir also had quite a snazzy jacket, didn't he, from Sandro, some designer brand. I don't think he's averse to popping into Selfridges for a bit of nice clobber either, is he?
And so we were saying it's Manifesto week. Shall we have a chat about what exactly are the parties promising?
Let's do it.
Well, look, what do we have here on the table in front of us? It is front page of today's Daily Express by Sam Lister. Up the workers. PM promises 2p cut in national insurance. And this is what Rishi Sunak's promising in the manifesto. Do you want to talk us through it?
Manifesto day today, one of the big components of that is a 2p cut in national insurance. Now, the Conservatives have already cut national insurance twice in the last year by 2p each time. So this would reduce it from 12 pence in the pound to 6 pence in the pound over the last year. That's a big thing.
Though, has it? We saw, what was it the autumn statement? We had that first cut. Then we had earlier this year, this second cut. Both times it didn't do anything in the opinion polls.
Well, I think from the Conservative point of view, it's not just about, clearly it is important to be popular and win support from voters, but it's also about doing the right thing. And they really believe that taxing work is the wrong thing to do. They want to abolish national insurance in the long term. That is a long-term aspiration. Obviously, Labour have come up with their own dodgy figures on that, but essentially, they believe this is the right thing to do. They want to make work pay. They want to cut the welfare bill.
I think if Rishi Sunak thought it was the right thing to do, though, remember, what did the Tories promise on national insurance at the last election? They said they weren't
John, come on, we've had a war, we've had COVID.
They said they weren't going to put it up, and then Rishi Sunak, who calls himself a tax cutter, is the one who broke the manifesto by putting national insurance to the highest rate it's ever been.
Well, I think most people surely would forgive him for breaking the manifesto in a once in 100 years global pandemic, followed by
it wasn't
the invasion.
It was meant to fix social care, wasn't it? But
well, yeah, there was a social care element to it, but clearly, because of all the other economic pressures, they've reevaluated that. They've looked at the situation. The tax burden is too high. They acknowledge that. But to be fair to the government, over the last 5 years, they didn't want any of this. Rishi Sunak did not want a COVID pandemic. He did not want a global supply chain crisis that put up the cost of goods. He did not want the invasion of Ukraine, which obviously then had various knock-on effects with our energy and food. They've had to make choices that Labour didn't predict it, the Lib Dems didn't predict it, nobody predicted what was going to happen in the last 5 years. We have been through unprecedented times, and so obviously they had to make decisions that went against the grain. But now the economy is turning that corner. They want to now start cutting taxes. They've already done it twice. This is a commitment to do it again.
I think that Labour could have made more of the broken promise of national insurance. Keir Starmer did mention it briefly in that debate last week, but they've tended not to talk about that. I think part of the reason of that is that they feel that the voters just think, well, all politicians break their promises, that they slightly zone out. But I was on the campaign trail yesterday with Rachel Reeves, who was just saying the Tories are so eager to shout tax, tax, tax at us, but just do not want to talk about their actual record, despite saying, oh, we love tax cutting, when they're the ones who put the taxes up.
But it's interesting. I think that the debate with Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak was really illuminating, because Rishi Sunak made that attack 12 times, and it was only right at the end of the debate that Keir Starmer even really seemed to acknowledge it. And then, 16 hours later, he came up with his response. It was a bit like, if you see somebody, an ex, for example, and then the following day you've come up with a really good, witty put down that you really upset that you didn't use at the time. So he called the Conservatives a liar, but it's a bit late then, isn't it? And if he's so leaden in his ability to take on Rishi Sunak, how is he going to deal with Vladimir Putin?
Wheel out the Tory line there.
Well,
get a job with the ministers,
isn't it?
Sam.
It's true. Well,
I'm struggling to find ministers to go on the radio to defend him. You do a better job. I think that clearly Labour and clearly Keir Starmer could have done a better job in that debate, hitting back at the tax policy or the tax claim that was coming from Rishi Sunak. I think, though, the next day, them saturating the airwaves saying, liar, liar, this is a lie, I actually think was quite effective. And I think it does, people feel Boris Johnson wasn't always great with the truth. The whole point of Rishi Sunak, I thought, on the steps of Downing Street, was all meant to be integrity, accountability, what was the third? Professionalism. And then we just see him trotting out dodgy figures in debates. Actually, I think it makes Rishi Sunak not look that great.
Do you know what, John? I went to the press conference where the Chancellor launched that dossier, and it was weeks before the election. It was a week before the election was called. It was weeks before the debate. Labour had weeks to go through those figures and challenge them. Keir Starmer should have been in that debate, ready to go with his counter-attack to that claim. He wasn't. The conclusion you draw from that is because he is going to put up taxes, and okay, he's not going to do it through national insurance, VAT or income tax, but he clearly is going to put up taxes. And we know this because Jonathan Ashworth was out yesterday refusing to deny that capital gains tax is going to rise.
You put these questions to the Labour Party. You don't put the questions to the Tory Party. Are you going to put up fuel duty? Because they can't answer that question. There are loads of tax questions the Tories can't answer. And as we saw in national insurance, is their word on tax worth anything anyway?
Well, Mel Stride was out this morning absolutely adamant that the Conservative government would not put up taxes, that the era of high taxes has to end. Now, Labour have not made that commitment. And we know it is, Labour like to spend other people's money. Let's not beat around the bush there, John. Well, let's go on to your paper. Top scoop today by the front page on the Daily Mail. Top scoop by none other than John Stevens, here to tell us all about it. Now, this is about children's health. What's going on here?
Yes, this is Keir Starmer is unveiling his action plan of how he's going to tackle problems with children's health. Possibly the biggest talking point is going to be this ban on under 16s buying energy drinks packed with caffeine and sugar. A lot of supermarkets have actually stopped selling them to children. But obviously, I mean, anyone who walks down the street will often see kids coming out of corner shops in their school uniform with these drinks on the way to school.
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think the Labour Party's approach to children and families and parenting is very, very informative of what their values are. And clearly, the Labour Party, we know, believe in state intervention. So they want to intervene on this. They are taking over the role of parents in deciding what's good for their kids.
What has Rishi Sunak announced in the last few months? It was the smoking ban and putting the age that you can smoke up and up and up, which obviously he wasn't powerful enough to get through past his MPs. And then
very divisive,
mucking
actually,
around with
Tory
A-levels
Party.
in 10 years' time, that I'm not sure that we can say the Labour Party is the one who the man who stayed.
Well, I think there's a number of things that occurred to me about this. One is that Keir Starmer is clearly planning to allow 16-year-olds to have the vote. So it's interesting, isn't it, that he has decided that the point when you are old enough to decide to have an energy drink is the same point when you can decide on the government who will decide if your country goes to war or not, for example. But that age is not the same as whether you can smoke or not, or have a drink. So I think there's an interesting debate there as to what counts as an adult and what counts as a child in Labour's mind. Also, the role of parents. It's very interesting that a lot of Labour's policies, well, I say a lot of Labour's policies, we don't hear any Labour policies, do we? Because they don't want to annoy them. They don't want to announce them. So what we have heard is they want to give kids free breakfast. They want to show kids how to brush their teeth. And they want to ban them from having energy drinks. And I just think there is a question there about what is the role of the parent and what is the role of the state.
If you're a parent, you can do so much. But if you've got a child who's 14, 15, they're more likely than not be walking to school. You can't have your eyes on them all the time. There is no reason why children that age should be buying these energy drinks early in the morning or any time of the day. I just think that's quite helpful for parents if you just know there's nowhere that they can go and buy them.
But it's indicative, isn't it, of Labour and the fact that they want to increase the involvement in the state in every area of our lives, and that includes the family. They're very keen to intervene. Where many Conservatives would say, actually, parents should be in control of children's health and they should be in control of whether they get a good breakfast, whether they can brush their teeth, whether they're drinking energy drinks.
So, Sam, we're almost at the end. What was your moment of the week so far?
Well, a personal moment of the week is when I visited my family at the weekend and found my dad has had a Sir Keir Starmer makeover. He's got the glasses, he's got the hair.
Has he got the opinions?
Well, no, I mean, it does not reflect his politics, I have to say. But he was quite worried about looking like the Labour leader. It's been a great moment of great hilarity in our household. So, John, tell me your moment of the week.
Well, I mean, my real moment of the week was seeing you dancing in the promo for this podcast, but maybe we should not talk about that. My political moment of the week is the candidate who's standing to replace Michael Gove in Surrey Heath, who was rather pleased with himself, put a picture, I think it was Saturday night, up on Twitter of him holding the keys to his new house that he'd moved in the constituency. But it didn't take that long for people on Twitter to find out that it was actually still on Airbnb. I looked up on Airbnb. It was there on Saturday night. You could get it. You could even book the nights just before the general election. It was several £100s. I thought about doing it because it was cancelable. But by the time, after I hesitated, it was taken offline.
He who hesitates is lost, John.
Exactly. Anyway, we want to hear from you. What do you want to know about what is going on the campaign trail? As we said earlier, you can follow us on YouTube at The Division Bell Podcast, on X at Daily Express and at Daily Mirror, and on TikTok at Mirror Politics to join the debate.
Well, that's all for today. You've been listening to The Division Bell, and you can catch up with us again on Thursday on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, and we're also available on YouTube.
Thank you for listening. This is a Reach Studio production hosted by myself, John Stevens, and Sam Lister. Produced and edited by Lydia O'Malley and Shabir Nuzai. Our researcher is Sheila Mahmoodi, and designs have been done by Curtis Phillips-Cozier and Luke Stidson. Audio managed by Matt Millard, and social content managed by Gully Burrows and Ed Washington. Content production and design overseen by Yara Silver, Harry Dumanel and Spencer Robotham.